To understand Cleopatra's story, we must first understand the dynasty she was born into, the Ptolemaic dynasty. After the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC, his vast empire was divided among his generals. Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander's trusted companions and a brilliant military leader, became the ruler of Egypt. His dynasty, the Ptolemies, would rule Egypt for nearly 300 years. From the very beginning, the Ptolemies were distinct among Hellenistic rulers. While most of their contemporaries adopted Greek customs, they quickly adapted to Egyptian traditions to consolidate their power over their diverse subjects. One of the most striking adaptations was the adoption of the ancient Egyptian practice of sibling marriage. This was not merely a cultural quirk, it was an explicit political strategy. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was seen as both a political and divine figure, a bridge between gods and mortals. Marrying within the family served to concentrate divine legitimacy and maintain the purity of the royal bloodline. For the Ptolemies, marrying siblings was a calculated move to prevent outside families from gaining influence. By keeping the throne within the immediate family, they aimed to stabilize their rule and reduce the risk of internal power struggles. Cleopatra VII was born in 69 BC into this complex and often ruthless world of political intrigue. She was the daughter of Ptolemy XII Auletes, the pharaoh known for his political maneuvering and controversial reign. Cleopatra grew up in a palace environment where education was prized, especially for royal heirs. Unlike many of her predecessors, Cleopatra was exceptionally well educated. She mastered multiple languages: Egyptian, Greek, Aramaic, and possibly others, a skill that set her apart in a dynasty where many rulers spoke only Greek. Her education was not purely academic, it was political training. Cleopatra was groomed from a young age to navigate the dangerous waters of Ptolemaic politics. When Cleopatra's father died in 51 BC, she ascended to the throne alongside her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, as co-ruler. At just 18 years old, Cleopatra was thrust into the position of power at a time when Egypt was rife with political instability. Her rule would not be shared equally. The court was split, and the power struggle between Cleopatra and her brother became inevitable. Egypt at the time was a melting pot of cultures and ambitions. Though the Ptolemies claimed the title of pharaoh, their Greek heritage made them outsiders to the native Egyptian population. The Ptolemies ruled a population that was primarily Egyptian, and they relied heavily on Greek administrators to run the bureaucracy. This created constant tension between the ruling family and the native priesthood, which held significant religious influence. Furthermore, the growing power of the Roman Republic cast a long shadow over Egypt. Rome had already begun its expansion, subjugating territories across the Mediterranean. Egypt, rich in grain and strategically located, was a jewel coveted by the Romans. Ptolemy XII, Cleopatra's father, had maintained power by essentially bribing the Romans, paying a hefty tribute to ensure his position. Yet, even this precarious strategy could not shield the kingdom from internal dissent and external pressure. The practice of sibling marriage was a deeply ingrained tradition in the Ptolemaic dynasty, going back to Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who married his sister Arsinoe II. This set a precedent that would echo throughout the dynasty. The marriage served multiple purposes. Firstly, it reinforced the divine status of the pharaoh. The Ptolemies styled themselves as god kings, blending Greek and Egyptian religious practices to legitimize their rule. Secondly, sibling marriage kept political power concentrated within the family, which theoretically minimized the risk of outside manipulation or claimants seizing the throne. However, this tradition was not without its costs. Rivalries within the family became fierce, with brothers and sisters often plotting against one another for ultimate control. Cleopatra's marriages to both of her brothers exemplify this brutal political reality. They were not unions of love, but calculated moves in a deadly game of power. In the patriarchal world of the ancient Mediterranean, women were rarely seen as sovereign rulers. Yet, the Ptolemaic dynasty was an exception. Cleopatra was not the first powerful woman in the dynasty. Her predecessors, including Arsinoe II and Berenice II, had held considerable influence, sometimes ruling as co-regents or even sole rulers. What made Cleopatra stand out was her unique ability to combine political cunning, cultural fluency, and charisma. She presented herself not only as a Greek monarch, but also as the reincarnation of the Egyptian goddess Isis. This dual identity enabled her to appeal to both Greek elites and the Egyptian priesthood and population. Her command of language, knowledge of Egyptian customs, and understanding of Roman politics allowed her to navigate the volatile environment of her time with extraordinary skill. While Cleopatra's focus remained on securing her position at home, a far greater force was rising in the West. By the mid-1st century BC, Rome was not just a republic, it was a juggernaut. Civil wars, shifting alliances, and political power plays defined Roman politics. Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, the famous First Triumvirate, had emerged as central figures in Rome's internal struggles. The growing instability in Rome presented both a threat and an opportunity for Cleopatra. Her father's political strategy of appeasing Rome was proving increasingly untenable as Rome itself became embroiled in civil war. It was only a matter of time before Egypt, with its wealth, strategic location, and weakened internal politics, would be drawn fully into Rome's sphere of influence. By 51 BC, when Cleopatra first ascended to the throne, the stage was set for a dramatic unfolding of political intrigue. She was young, ambitious, and faced with enemies at home and abroad. Her family was divided, her throne insecure, and the Roman Republic loomed larger than ever. Her marriages to her brothers, Ptolemy XIII and later Ptolemy XIV, would be far more than personal relationships. They were acts of political necessity, designed to secure power, maintain legitimacy, and confront the unstoppable march of Roman expansion. This is the untold history of Cleopatra, not merely a tale of romance and tragedy, but a profound story of strategy, survival, and political genius. In the next chapter, we will delve into Cleopatra's first marriage, to her brother Ptolemy XIII, and the fierce battle for the Egyptian throne that would shape the fate of an empire. Cleopatra VII was born into one of the most tumultuous periods in Egypt's long and storied history. The Ptolemaic dynasty, though founded by a trusted general of Alexander the Great, was by then a dynasty in crisis, a dynasty beset by internal strife, external threats, and shifting political alliances. Her birth in 69 BC marked the arrival of a young woman destined to alter the course of history, though few at the time could have predicted the scale of her future impact. The Ptolemaic palace in Alexandria was a world unto itself, grand, opulent, yet rife with intrigue. Cleopatra was born into a family accustomed to both power and peril. Her father, Ptolemy XII Auletes, known as the flute player, ruled Egypt with a precarious grip. His reign was marked by political instability, public unrest, and reliance on Roman support. Her mother's identity remains uncertain in historical records, but Cleopatra's upbringing was that of royalty, highly educated, meticulously trained, and steeped in both Greek and Egyptian traditions. From a young age, Cleopatra exhibited intelligence and ambition. She was fluent in several languages, likely mastering Egyptian, Greek, Aramaic, Hebrew, and possibly others, an unusual accomplishment even for a Ptolemaic monarch. Her grasp of Egyptian culture, combined with her Greek heritage, gave her a unique ability to communicate with and understand the diverse peoples of Egypt. This bicultural fluency would later become one of her most powerful political tools. Cleopatra's education was unparalleled, especially for a woman in her time. She studied philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, and rhetoric, learning the skills necessary for statecraft. Her tutors were scholars from Greece and Egypt, exposing her to a broad spectrum of knowledge. This education was not merely academic. It was a deliberate preparation for ruling. The young princess was groomed to think strategically, to analyze political dynamics, and to speak persuasively. Cleopatra's ability to present herself as a goddess, a scholar, and a leader stemmed from this rigorous preparation. She understood the value of image, perception, and political messaging long before the concept became a modern science. In 51 BC, the death of Ptolemy XII created a power vacuum at the heart of Egypt's fragile political system. Cleopatra, at just 18 years old, was suddenly thrust into power alongside her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, who was approximately 10 years old. The decision for a joint rule was in keeping with Ptolemaic tradition, ruling as co-sovereigns to maintain dynastic continuity. However, this arrangement was far from harmonious. Cleopatra, by virtue of her age, experience, and education, was the more competent ruler. Yet the Ptolemaic court was dominated by factions of advisors, Egyptian priests, and Greek courtiers who had their own agendas. Power struggles erupted almost immediately. Cleopatra's authority was constantly challenged, and within months, conflict with Ptolemy XIII and his powerful regents became inevitable. The Ptolemaic court was a hotbed of intrigue, ambition, and betrayal. Several factions vied for influence. On one side stood Cleopatra, who represented a relatively independent vision of the monarchy, seeking to stabilize Egypt and assert her authority. On the other, Ptolemy XIII's regents, led by the powerful eunuch Pothinus and the general Achilles, sought to marginalize Cleopatra and consolidate power for themselves. Pothinus and Achilles viewed Cleopatra as a threat to their own positions. They worked tirelessly to isolate her, erode her authority, and ultimately remove her from power. Cleopatra, however, was no passive victim of circumstance. She maneuvered skillfully, building alliances, appealing to the Egyptian priesthood by embracing local customs and projecting herself as the legitimate sovereign. The struggle for power reached a critical point when Pothinus and Achilles forced Cleopatra into exile. In 49 BC, Cleopatra fled Alexandria, seeking safety and a chance to regroup. This move was both a tactical retreat and a desperate bid for survival. From exile, Cleopatra sought support to reclaim her throne. Her survival depended not only on local allies, but increasingly on the shifting power dynamics of the Roman Republic. Her political acumen shone brightly during this period. Cleopatra understood that Rome's involvement in Egyptian affairs was inevitable, and she began laying the groundwork for a critical alliance that would change the course of her life forever. In the midst of Egypt's internal turmoil, the Roman civil war between Julius Caesar and Pompey was reaching its climax. Pompey the Great, defeated by Caesar at the Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BC, fled to Egypt seeking refuge, hoping to exploit the Ptolemaic power struggle for his own advantage. However, this proved to be a fateful decision. Instead of finding asylum, Pompey was assassinated upon arrival by agents of Ptolemy XIII, who sought to ingratiate themselves with Julius Caesar. When Caesar arrived in pursuit of Pompey, he found himself entangled in the web of Egyptian politics, a situation far more complicated than a mere pursuit of a defeated rival. Cleopatra saw an opportunity in Caesar's arrival. She understood that aligning with Caesar could not only secure her return to power, but also strengthen Egypt's position in the Mediterranean. It was at this critical juncture that Cleopatra's legendary cunning and strategic mind would come to the forefront. In an act that would become legend, Cleopatra reportedly had herself smuggled into Caesar's presence, possibly rolled in a carpet or bag, to bypass court guards and meet the Roman general personally. This audacious move was more than a bold gesture. It was a calculated political masterstroke. Cleopatra presented herself as a determined and capable sovereign, capable of forming a partnership with Rome's most powerful man. Her charm, intellect, and political acumen won Caesar's favor, setting the stage for a partnership that would reshape the destiny of Egypt and the Mediterranean world. Thus began one of history's most legendary alliances. Cleopatra's early life, marked by education, political intrigue, and survival against overwhelming odds, led her to seize an opportunity that would define her reign. In the next chapter, we will explore the turbulent and dramatic marriage between Cleopatra and her first brother, Ptolemy XIII, a union forged not in love, but in power, ambition, and survival. In the ancient world, political marriages were rarely about love or personal choice. They were tools, strategic moves in the complex game of power. Cleopatra's marriage to her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, was no exception. It was a calculated political decision, one that would have profound consequences for both Egypt and the Roman world. The Ptolemaic dynasty, like many royal families of antiquity, practiced sibling marriage as a way to consolidate power and maintain the purity of the royal bloodline. Kishach. Following the death of Ptolemy XIII in 51 BC, Cleopatra, at age 18, ascended the throne alongside her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, who was about 10 years old. This co-regency was intended to stabilize the dynasty and fulfill the dynastic traditions of Egypt. The marriage was not about romance, but political legitimacy. However, the arrangement was fragile from the start. Cleopatra was the more capable and experienced ruler, but the regents, particularly the powerful eunuch Pothinus and the general Achilles, viewed her as a rival to their own ambitions. Tensions escalated as Cleopatra sought to assert her authority over the young king and the court. Cleopatra's position was precarious. Pothinus and Achilles worked to undermine her rule, rallying court factions against her. Their power base was strong, anchored by the Egyptian priesthood and a large military force loyal to Ptolemy XIII. In contrast, Cleopatra had the support of the Alexandrian populace, scholars, and a smaller faction of loyalists who recognized her competence and legitimacy. A bitter power struggle ensued, erupting into open conflict by 48 BC. The young queen found herself besieged within the royal palace, effectively a prisoner in her own home. The palace walls became the stage of a civil war, a war between siblings, but one fueled by far greater ambitions and external pressures. As the struggle between Cleopatra and Ptolemy XIII escalated, the situation became inextricably linked to the larger conflict shaking the Roman Republic. After defeating Pompey at the Battle of Pharsalus, Julius Caesar pursued his rival to Egypt, seeking to assert Roman authority and secure political advantage. However, Caesar's arrival complicated matters. The young queen and her brother's regents saw Caesar as both a threat and an opportunity. Pompey's assassination, ordered by Ptolemy XIII's advisors, was an attempt to please Caesar, but it backfired. Rather than win favor, Caesar was deeply offended by Pompey's brutal murder, viewing it as both dishonorable and politically unwise. Cleopatra recognized that aligning with Caesar was her best chance to reclaim power. In one of the most iconic moments in history, Cleopatra reportedly smuggled herself into Caesar's presence, hidden in a rug or a bag. Accounts vary. This daring act was not merely theatrical, it was a deliberate political maneuver. Cleopatra presented herself as a sovereign fully capable of ruling Egypt, deserving of Caesar's support. Her intelligence, poise, and charm captivated the Roman general, and an alliance was quickly formed. What followed was a brutal conflict known as the Alexandrian War. Caesar found himself trapped in Alexandria with a relatively small force, caught between the rival factions of the Ptolemaic court. Cleopatra's support proved crucial. She provided Caesar with both political legitimacy and local intelligence, strengthening his position. The war was intense, with heavy casualties on both sides. The city of Alexandria suffered significant damage, including the famed Library of Alexandria, which may have been partially destroyed during the conflict. Ultimately, Caesar's forces prevailed. Ptolemy XIII drowned in the Nile while attempting to flee, eliminating the immediate threat to Cleopatra's rule. With Ptolemy XIII's death, Cleopatra's position as ruler was secured, but not without cost. She co-ruled officially with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, in keeping with tradition. But it was understood that Cleopatra held the true power. Her relationship with Caesar deepened, both politically and personally. Caesar recognized Cleopatra's brilliance as a ruler and sought to stabilize Egypt under her reign, while also furthering his own ambitions in the East. Cleopatra's ability to navigate this complex political landscape, asserting authority over both her people and one of the most powerful men in the world, marked the true beginning of her reign. From this union between Cleopatra and Julius Caesar came a son, Ptolemy XV, commonly known as Caesarion. Caesarion's birth was shrouded in political significance. Cleopatra presented him as the legitimate heir of both Egypt and Rome, although Rome never officially recognized Caesarion as Caesar's son. Nonetheless, for Cleopatra, Caesarion symbolized her political future, a tangible embodiment of her alliance with Rome and a claim to power that transcended her co-regency. The young queen's political savvy was already evident. Her ability to merge dynastic ambition with pragmatic alliances defined her reign. Cleopatra's marriage to Ptolemy XIII was not a love story. It was a calculated, high-stakes political strategy, thrusting her into a vortex of power struggles, war, and diplomacy. Her bold alliance with Julius Caesar would solidify her power for a time, but the real test of her reign was yet to come. In the next chapter, we will examine the aftermath of this pivotal moment, focusing on Cleopatra's subsequent marriage to Ptolemy XIV and the complex legacy of her relationship with Caesar. The death of Ptolemy XIII marked a decisive turning point in Cleopatra's reign, but it was far from the end of her political challenges. Egypt, ravaged by civil war, lay in fragile condition. The power vacuum left behind demanded careful navigation. Following the victory in the Alexandrian War, Cleopatra stood as the dominant power in Egypt. Despite her supremacy, tradition and political expediency dictated that a male co-ruler sit beside her on the throne. Thus, Cleopatra installed her younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, as co-regent. He was only about 12 years old, far too young to wield real power. This arrangement was largely ceremonial, a facade designed to appease conservative elements of the Egyptian establishment and maintain dynastic continuity. Cleopatra effectively held full authority. Her political acumen allowed her to navigate this delicate balance, projecting the image of unity while maintaining absolute control. Cleopatra's relationship with Julius Caesar was pivotal, not only politically but personally. Caesar remained in Egypt for over a year after the Alexandrian War, an unusually long stay for a Roman general accustomed to swift campaigns. During this period, the relationship between Cleopatra and Caesar blossomed, giving Cleopatra unparalleled influence in both Egypt and Rome. Their union was symbolic of a powerful alliance, Egypt aligning itself with the might of Rome. For Caesar, Cleopatra was more than a political pawn. Ancient sources suggest he was enamored by her intellect, charm, and political savvy. Cleopatra, for her part, understood the strategic value of this relationship. Caesar was the most powerful man in the known world. Their connection opened doors to Roman politics and military support. In 47 BC, Cleopatra gave birth to a son, Ptolemy XV Philopator Philometor Caesar, better known by the affectionate name Caesarion, meaning Little Caesar. Caesarion was presented as the legitimate heir of both the Egyptian and Roman worlds. Cleopatra publicly declared that Caesarion was Julius Caesar's son. though Caesar never officially recognized the child as his own. Roman political dynamics complicated the matter. Recognizing Caesarion as Caesar's legitimate heir would have threatened the delicate balance of power in Rome and sparked political scandal. Nonetheless, Caesarion became central to Cleopatra's long-term strategy. He was a living symbol of her alliance with Rome and a potential bridge between two great civilizations. Throughout her reign, Cleopatra nurtured Caesarion as both son and political asset. Cleopatra's influence did not go unnoticed in Rome. Her presence in Caesar's life stirred controversy among the Roman elite. Many senators viewed her as a dangerous foreign queen, a distraction from Roman affairs. There were whispers of a foreign invasion, fears of Egypt's interference in Roman politics. Despite Caesar's powerful position, these whispers gained traction. The Roman establishment was uneasy about the growing influence of Cleopatra and the presence of Caesarion. Caesar, ever pragmatic, kept the situation in check, balancing his personal and political interests. But the seeds of future conflict were already planted. After over a year in Egypt, Julius Caesar returned to Rome in 46 BC, leaving Cleopatra in a position of greater strength than ever before. She left Caesarion behind, securing her dynasty's future. Her status as sole ruler of Egypt was solidified. Ptolemy XIV remained co-regent, but only in name. Cleopatra's return to Egypt was not a retreat, but a strategic move. She now ruled independently with the experience of interacting with the Roman world's most powerful figure under her belt. Her ability to blend Egyptian tradition with Roman diplomacy was unmatched. Cleopatra's reign continued to be marked by the delicate balance between tradition and innovation. Maintaining dynastic legitimacy remained a priority. Egyptian tradition demanded a male co-ruler. When Ptolemy XIV mysteriously died in 44 BC, likely poisoned by Cleopatra herself, a calculated but unconfirmed move, Caesarion was elevated to co-ruler at the age of 3. This was a bold political maneuver. By declaring Caesarion as her co-regent, Cleopatra signaled to the world her intent to maintain both Egyptian royal customs and a direct symbolic connection to Rome. Caesarion now stood as the living link between two great empires, a potential future ruler who would embody Cleopatra's political vision. Cleopatra's adept political maneuvering following Ptolemy XIII's death showcased her brilliance as a ruler. Her relationship with Julius Caesar had not only secured her position, but also elevated her standing on the world stage. Yet, with Caesar's assassination in 44 BC, a new chapter of uncertainty and intrigue was about to unfold, a chapter that would test Cleopatra's resolve like never before. In the next part, we will delve into the aftermath of Caesar's death, Cleopatra's relationship with Mark Antony, and how she continued to wield power amid the shifting tides of Roman politics. Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt, was far more than a queen entangled in the romances of powerful men. Her legacy transcends scandal and myth, standing as a testament to her remarkable intellect, political acumen, and unyielding determination to preserve Egypt's sovereignty in a rapidly changing world. Cleopatra was an astute stateswoman whose every decision was guided by a deep understanding of power dynamics. Her reign was marked by a pragmatic approach to governance. Unlike many monarchs who ruled by divine right alone, Cleopatra understood the importance of public perception. She was multilingual, speaking Egyptian, Greek, Latin, and several other languages, allowing her to communicate directly with diplomats, scholars, and leaders. Cleopatra's knowledge of Egyptian religion and traditions made her popular among her subjects, while her understanding of Roman politics enabled her to navigate the treacherous waters of imperial ambition. Her policies strengthened Egypt's economy through trade, bolstered its defenses, and maintained relative internal stability. but her greatest challenge remained the looming power of Rome, a force that both protected and threatened her kingdom. The relationship between Cleopatra and Julius Caesar is often reduced to a tale of romance, but it was far more significant as a political alliance. Caesar was a man at the pinnacle of power, but his political position in Rome was precarious. Aligning with Cleopatra allowed him to exert influence over Egypt and extend his reach into the eastern Mediterranean. Cleopatra, in turn, leveraged Caesar's support to solidify her rule, maintain Egypt's independence, and assert her dynastic ambitions. Their union was emblematic of a strategic partnership, mutually beneficial, deeply political, and carefully calculated. Though Caesar's assassination in 44 BC altered the political landscape irrevocably, Cleopatra continued to wield power with skill and determination. Following Caesar's death, Cleopatra faced a new political reality. Her next great alliance was with Mark Antony, a member of Rome's powerful Second Triumvirate. Antony and Cleopatra's relationship was complex, a mixture of politics, passion, and ambition. Cleopatra understood Antony's vulnerability in Rome, as he faced political rivals such as Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus. Their alliance was both romantic and strategic, designed to consolidate power and challenge the growing dominance of Rome's Western leadership. Antony showered Cleopatra with wealth, titles, and territories, declaring her Queen of Kings. Caesarion was elevated further in prominence, symbolizing a claim not just to Egypt, but to Roman imperial legacy. However, the alliance with Antony ultimately led to Cleopatra's greatest challenge. In 31 BC, Antony and Cleopatra's forces confronted Octavian's at the Battle of Actium, a pivotal moment in history. The battle ended in catastrophic defeat for Antony and Cleopatra. Octavian's forces were better equipped and strategically superior. Antony and Cleopatra fled back to Egypt, their hopes of maintaining power slipping away. Cleopatra's political vision of an independent, prosperous Egypt aligned with Rome was crumbling. As Octavian's forces closed in on Alexandria, Cleopatra's fate was sealed. Rather than be paraded as a captive in Rome, Cleopatra chose death, an act both of defiance and sovereignty. Legend holds that she allowed a poisonous asp to bite her, embracing death on her own terms. Her passing marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and Egypt's absorption into the Roman Empire as a province. Her son, Caesarion, was executed on Octavian's orders, eliminating any rival claim to power. Yet Cleopatra's legacy was far from extinguished. Cleopatra's life has been immortalized in countless works of art, literature, and popular culture. Her story resonates not simply because of romance or tragedy, but because of her unparalleled ability to shape history. She was the last true pharaoh of Egypt, a woman who ruled not just by birthright, but by intellect, charisma, and sheer political will. Cleopatra remains a symbol of female power in a world dominated by men, a ruler who navigated wars, treachery, and imperial ambitions. Her legacy is not one of mere beauty or seduction, as history sometimes suggests, but of fierce intelligence, unmatched strategy, and a profound connection to her people. Cleopatra VII's story is far more than a chapter of love and loss. It is the story of a queen who defied the odds, an emblem of resilience and political mastery. Her life remains a testament to ambition, sovereignty, and the enduring struggle for power in a world where the tides of history are unforgiving. Though her reign ended in defeat, her legacy endures, a legend written not in the conquests of men, but in the enduring spirit of a woman who dared to rule. Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt, left a mark on history that transcends the ancient world. More than 2 millennia have passed since her reign, Yet her story continues to captivate scholars, artists, and the public alike. Historical accounts of Cleopatra have often been colored by the perspectives of Roman historians, whose views were shaped by political rivalry and cultural bias. Roman sources depicted her as a manipulative seductress, playing upon the desires of powerful men to advance her own position. But modern historians argue that this characterization is misleading and oversimplified. Cleopatra was an educated, multilingual, and highly capable ruler who deftly managed her kingdom's political, economic, and cultural affairs. Her intelligence, strategic acumen, and diplomatic skill were instrumental in preserving Egypt's sovereignty during an era of aggressive Roman expansion. Rather than a passive figure of romance, she was an active agent in the political dramas of her time. Cleopatra's story has inspired countless works of art, theater, and film, each interpretation adding a layer to her mythos. From Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra to modern cinematic portrayals, she has been cast variously as a femme fatale, a tragic heroine, and a symbol of female power. These portrayals, while dramatized, reflect the enduring fascination with her character, a woman who challenged the conventions of her time. Her image as both a political mastermind and an icon of beauty has become inseparable from popular imagination. In contemporary times, Cleopatra stands as a symbol of female empowerment. Her ability to wield power in a male-dominated world, to engage diplomatically with the mightiest empire of her age, and to assert her vision of leadership speaks to her resilience and intellect. Cleopatra's legacy challenges the simplistic notions of beauty and seduction, urging a recognition of her strategic mind and political prowess. She was not merely a queen defined by her relationships, but a leader who navigated political intrigue, warfare, and shifting alliances with remarkable skill. Cleopatra VII remains the last pharaoh of ancient Egypt, a civilization that once stood as the cradle of human progress, culture, and power. Her death in 30 BC symbolized the end of an era, as Egypt became a Roman province. But her story lives on. Her legacy is woven into the fabric of world history, a constant reminder of ambition, intellect, and the complexities of power. Cleopatra was more than a monarch. She was a symbol of resistance, of a nation's last stand against imperial conquest. As the sun sets over the Nile, the echoes of Cleopatra's life continue to resonate through time. Her name evokes wonder, debate, and inspiration. Cleopatra VII, a woman of indomitable spirit, remains an icon of history, a testament to the power of intellect, strategy, and the enduring quest for sovereignty. Her story, though centuries old, continues to captivate the world, a legacy not bound by time, but forever etched in the annals of history.